an act of kindness. The rain pattered against the windows of Café Lumière, creating a soothing rhythm that Olivia Porter had learned to appreciate during her long shifts. At 23, she moved with practiced efficiency between tables, her dark hair tucked neatly into a bun, a genuine smile warming her features despite the exhaustion that tugged at her shoulders. "Order up, Liv," called Dimitri from the kitchen, sliding a plate of steaming pastries across the counter. "Thanks, Dee," she replied, balancing the plate alongside a fresh pot of tea on her tray. The cafe occupied a cozy corner of the Bellamy building, an architectural marvel that had stood downtown for nearly a century. Its marble floors and intricate moldings spoke of a bygone era of elegance that Olivia admired during quiet moments. Those moments were rare. Working double shifts 6 days a week left little time for daydreaming. The bell above the door chimed softly as an elderly man shuffled in, seeking refuge from the downpour. His clothes were simple but well kept, though his shoes, once fine leather Oxfords, were now caked with mud and rain. He settled into a corner table, seemingly content to watch the storm through the window. "Would you like to see a menu, sir?" Olivia asked, approaching with her notepad. He looked up with surprisingly bright hazel eyes beneath bushy white eyebrows. "Just tea, if you don't mind. Something warm." She nodded and turned to prepare his order, noticing how he winced slightly when shifting his feet. The mud from his shoes was beginning to dry, leaving small clumps on the floor beneath his table. Without thinking twice, Olivia grabbed a clean towel from behind the counter and filled a small basin with warm water. When she returned, the man looked surprised. "I've brought your tea," she explained, setting down the pot, "and thought you might like to clean your shoes a bit." The rain can be unforgiving on good leather. Before he could respond, she knelt and gently placed the basin near his feet. "May I?" His expression softened with something between confusion and gratitude. "Young lady, you needn't trouble yourself." "It's no trouble," Olivia assured him, already dampening the towel. "I've ruined enough shoes in rainstorms to know the feeling." With careful movements, she began wiping away the mud, revealing the rich chestnut leather beneath. Her fingers worked methodically, remembering techniques from when she'd restored vintage accessories. For her design projects, dreams now housed in sketchbooks beneath her bed. "You have a designer's touch," the old man observed. Quietly, Olivia looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" "The way you handle the leather, respectful, understanding its value beyond the surface." She smiled, feeling a rare connection to her buried ambitions. "I wanted to study fashion design. Life had other plans." "Life often does," he murmured, watching her work. "But plans can change." When she finished, his shoes looked remarkably better. Not perfect, but dignified again. She rose, gathering the basin. "What do I owe you for this kindness?" he asked, reaching for his wallet. Olivia shook her head firmly. "Nothing at all. It was my pleasure." "Then I shall simply say thank you," he replied, his eyes studying her with unexpected intensity. For the remainder of his visit, he sipped his tea in silence, occasionally making notes in a small leather-bound journal. When he finally stood to leave, he placed a modest tip on the table and nodded to Olivia with a gentle smile. "Take care in the rain," she called after him. "I believe the storm is passing," he responded cryptically before disappearing through the door. Olivia thought little, more of the encounter as she finished her shift and began her evening routine, checking her meager savings, sketching new designs by lamplight in her tiny apartment, and finally collapsing into bed with dreams of fabrics and forms that danced just beyond her reach. She couldn't have known that the simple act of cleaning an old man's shoes had set into motion events that would transform her life completely. The storm was indeed passing, but something far more powerful was brewing on the horizon. Unexpected invitation. 3 days after the rainy afternoon encounter, Olivia was restocking sugar packets when Dimitri approached with an envelope. "Someone left this for you at the register," he said, eyebrows raised with curiosity. "Fancy paper." The envelope was thick cream parchment, her name written in elegant calligraphy. Inside was an invitation to a private gathering on the Bellamy Building's rooftop garden that evening. a space rumored to exist but closed to the public for decades. Who delivered this? She asked, turning the card over. Dmitri shrugged. Some guy in a suit. Said it was important. That evening, after borrowing a simple black dress from her roommate Prisha, Olivia found herself in an elevator she'd never noticed before, guided by a doorman who appeared when she presented her invitation. The rooftop garden was breathtaking, a hidden oasis of greenery, string lights, and spectacular city views. A small gathering of elegantly dressed people mingled among sculptures and flowering trees. "Miss Porter," came a familiar voice. She turned to find the elderly man from the cafe, now impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his shoes polished to perfection. "You," she said, recognition dawning. "I didn't realize that I owned the building." His eyes twinkled. "I'm Edmund Sullivan. Please join me." As he guided her through the garden, Edmund explained how he occasionally visited his properties anonymously to observe how they truly functioned. "Your kindness was remarkable precisely because you had no idea who I was," he said. "That's rare in my experience." He introduced her to various guests, artists, designers, business leaders, who treated her with unexpected deference. Finally, they approached a tall man examining a sculpture near the garden's edge. "Thomas, meet Miss Olivia Porter, the young lady I mentioned." Thomas Sullivan turned, his thoughtful gray eyes instantly meeting hers. At around 30, he had his grandfather's strong features softened by a gentle expression. "The shoe savior," Thomas smiled, shaking her hand. "Grandfather hasn't stopped talking about you." "I just did what anyone would do," Olivia insisted, feeling her cheeks warm. "That's precisely what makes it exceptional," Edmund replied. "Because most wouldn't." As Edmund was called away by other guests, Thomas offered Olivia a tour of the garden. Unlike the polished business types surrounding them, he spoke with genuine warmth about the rooftop's history, pointing out plants his grandmother had selected decades ago. "So what do you do when you're not rescuing footwear?" he asked, offering her a glass of champagne. "I'm just a waitress," she started, then corrected herself. "Actually, I design clothes, or try to. I've been saving for design school." Thomas's interest seemed to deepen. "May I see your work sometime?" Before she could answer, Edmund rejoined them, observing their easy conversation with evident satisfaction. "Miss Porter, I have a proposition," he announced. "I'm establishing a small creative initiative within the Bellamy Building, a studio space for emerging designers. Thomas will be overseeing the project." Thomas looked as surprised as Olivia felt. "I'd like to offer you the first residency," Edmund continued. "Workspace, materials budget, and mentorship." Olivia nearly dropped her champagne. "Mr. Sullivan, that's incredibly generous, but—" "Not generosity," Edmund corrected. "Investment. Thomas tells me there's a vacant retail space on the ground floor that would make an excellent showcase for the right designer." That night, walking home under star-filled skies, Olivia felt reality shifting beneath her feet. The business card in her pocket, embossed with Thomas Sullivan, creative director, seemed to pulse with possibility. She couldn't know that Thomas had already seen her sketchbook, that when she'd helped Edmund, her bag had fallen open, revealing designs that caught his practiced eye. Nor could she guess that Thomas had spent 3 days convincing his grandfather that her talent deserved nurturing, only to have Edmund surprise them both with his ambitious plan. As Olivia climbed the stairs to her apartment, her mind raced with equal parts excitement and doubt. She couldn't help wondering if this unexpected turn was too good to be true, and what might be expected of her in return. Dreams taking shape. The studio space exceeded anything Olivia could have imagined. High ceilings, natural light pouring through restored windows, and enough room to bring her designs from paper to reality. For the first time, her creations began taking physical form, structured jackets with unexpected details, dresses that transformed with the wearer's movement, accessories that told stories. Thomas visited often, initially maintaining professional distance as he helped establish the framework for what they began calling the Bellamy Workshop. But as weeks passed, their collaboration deepened. "These seams tell a journey," he observed one afternoon. fingers tracing a jacket Olivia had constructed from repurposed vintage materials. "You're not just making clothes, you're preserving histories." Olivia looked up from her sewing machine, surprised by his perception. "My grandmother taught me that everything carries memories. The fabrics remember where they've been." "That's exactly what the industry is missing," Thomas said, excitement edging into his normally reserved demeanor. "Everything's disposable now, no soul, no story." Their shared vision began taking shape, sustainable luxury that honored craftsmanship and narrative. Thomas brought industry knowledge from his years at design houses in Milan and Paris before returning to help manage his grandfather's extensive holdings. Olivia contributed raw creativity and technical skill that surprised even veteran designers who occasionally visited. Edmund watched their partnership blossom with quiet satisfaction, offering resources without interference. "Sometimes potential just needs the right conditions," he remarked during a rare visit, examining a dress form draped in Olivia's latest creation. Late nights became their ritual. Takeout containers scattered among fabric swatches, their conversations flowing from design philosophy to childhood memories. Olivia learned of Thomas's struggle to forge his own path despite family expectations. Thomas discovered Olivia's journey from a small town, carrying her mother's sewing machine on 3 different buses to reach the city. "My parents thought I was chasing fantasies," she confessed one evening as they cataloged vintage buttons. "Maybe they were right." Thomas looked up, moonlight from the tall windows catching his profile. Some fantasies deserve chasing. Their first collection took shape, 12 pieces that embodied their shared aesthetic. Edmund arranged a meeting with buyers from an exclusive department store, who placed a small but significant order after seeing just half the collection. "This changes everything," Olivia whispered when the buyers left. Thomas nodded, his expression complex. "It's just the beginning." That night, walking together through the empty building, something shifted between them. Thomas stopped suddenly in the marble lobby. "I need to be clear about something," he said, voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "My grandfather didn't create this opportunity because I asked. He did it because he saw something extraordinary in you." Olivia studied his face, realizing how much his respect meant to her. "And what do you see?" Instead of answering, Thomas gently took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. The gesture spoke volumes, admiration evolving into something deeper, more personal. When they finally parted ways, Olivia returned to her apartment, now filled with sketches and fabric samples, and gazed out at the city lights. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not just for her talent, but for her essence. What neither realized was that their emerging success had caught attention beyond the department store buyers. Industry veterans were beginning to whisper about the Bellamy workshop, and not everyone welcomed new voices in the tightly controlled world of high fashion. Obstacles and resilience. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a canceled fabric order, crucial Japanese textiles suddenly unavailable, despite confirmed delivery dates. Then, a scheduled photo shoot for their lookbook was inexplicably postponed, the photographer citing conflicting commitments. "Someone's interfering," Thomas concluded after their third manufacturing setback. "The Prescott Group has significant influence with suppliers." "Prescott?" Olivia asked, sorting through rejected sample garments returned with suspicious damage. "Victoria Prescott, fashion industry veteran, notorious for eliminating competition before it gains traction. Also my former employer and briefly fiancé." The revelation hung in the air between them. Olivia had glimpsed Victoria in fashion magazines, imperious, accomplished, formidable. "You never mentioned her," Olivia said carefully. "It ended badly," Thomas admitted. "When I refused to join her family business permanently, she took it as both professional and personal rejection. Financial pressures mounted as production delays threatened their department store deadline. Edmund offered additional funding, but Thomas refused. "We need to prove this works on its own merits," he insisted. Late one evening, Olivia returned to find the studio door ajar. Inside, their space had been methodically vandalized, not random destruction, but targeted damage. Pattern templates slashed, custom dyes spilled across finished garments, computer files corrupted. 2 weeks of work gone, Olivia whispered, holding shredded silk. Thomas's face hardened as he surveyed the damage. Victoria doesn't usually get her hands dirty. This is something else. The police report yielded nothing. With their deadline looming, Olivia and Thomas faced a critical decision. We can request an extension, Thomas suggested, exhaustion evident in his voice. Olivia stood amid the destruction, something resolute crystallizing within her. No, we rebuild. Better. For 5 days, they barely left the studio, sleeping in shifts on the old sofa, redesigning pieces with even greater intention. Olivia called in favors from former cafe customers who worked in textiles. Thomas leveraged connections who operated outside Victoria's influence. When Edmund visited and saw their exhausted determination, he silently arranged for meals to be delivered and additional security installed. He also made a phone call to a contemporary whose granddaughter worked at a fashion publication. The morning of their deadline, they presented not 12 but 8 perfect pieces to the department store buyers, each garment telling a more focused story of resilience and transformation. The collection was smaller but undeniably stronger. We want exclusivity, the lead buyer announced after examining each piece, and feature placement for holiday. That night, rather than celebration, Olivia found Thomas on the rooftop garden, staring at the city lights. "I never wanted to drag you into industry politics," he said when she joined him. "You didn't drag me anywhere," she replied, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. "I chose this." "I choose this." Thomas turned to her, vulnerability evident in his expression. "Victoria called today. She offered to resolve our difficulties if I returned to Prescott, professionally and personally." Olivia's heart contracted. But before she could respond, Thomas continued. "I told her I'd found something authentic, in work and in life. Something I wouldn't compromise." His fingers intertwined with Olivia's, and in that moment, standing among the same garden lights that had illuminated their first meeting, both understood that what had begun as a creative partnership had blossomed into something neither had anticipated, but both now recognized as essential. Full circle 1 year later, the Bellamy Building's ground floor transformed for the official launch of Porter Sullivan. No longer just a workshop, but a recognized atelier with the once vacant retail space now. Their flagship boutique, the space honored the building's heritage while embracing their forward thinking, vision, reclaimed materials, innovative displays, and a central pedestal showcasing their signature piece, a jacket crafted from vintage fabrics, each with documented history, constructed to evolve with its wearer over decades rather than seasons. "Sustainability meets story," declared the feature in Fashion Forward magazine, prominently displayed near the entrance. Porter Sullivan doesn't just create garments. They create legacies. As evening approached, Olivia surveyed final preparations for their launch event. Their team, now 8 people including former cafe workers Dimitri and Prisha, added finishing touches to displays. "Nervous?" Thomas asked, appearing beside her. "Terrified," she admitted, smoothing her dress, one of her original designs from those first frantic studio days. But ready. The guest list included industry leaders, ethical fashion advocates, and carefully selected media. Victoria Prescott had requested an invitation, a gesture Thomas and Olivia decided to accept after much discussion, recognizing that true success meant transcending old rivalries. Edmund arrived early, now walking with a cane but his eyes as bright as ever. When he entered the boutique, conversations hushed momentarily in recognition. "Miss Porter," he greeted Olivia formally, though they'd grown close over the past year. "May I have a word?" He guided her to a quiet corner, Thomas joining them. "1 year ago, you cleaned an old man's shoes without expectation," Edmund said. "Today, I want to ensure your future has the foundation it deserves." He presented legal documents transferring 20% ownership of the Bellamy Building into a trust benefiting Porter Sullivan. "This was never about charity," he explained, noting Olivia's shocked expression. "It was about recognizing something extraordinary and ensuring it flourishes." This building has stood for a century because its foundations were built with integrity, just like what you two have created. As guests arrived and champagne flowed, Olivia found herself momentarily alone, watching Thomas charm investors with the same authenticity that had drawn her to him. She noticed a young server struggling with a tray, dropping napkins, clearly anxious at the elegant gathering. Without hesitation, Olivia knelt to help collect the scattered napkins, smiling reassuringly at the girl. "Thank you," the server whispered. "I'm so sorry, it's my first night." "My pleasure," Olivia replied. "Everyone deserves a little kindness when they're finding their footing." From across the room, she caught Thomas watching the interaction, his expression filled with such tenderness that it momentarily took her breath away. In that moment, surrounded by the manifestation of their shared vision, Olivia understood that success wasn't measured in magazine features or exclusive clients. True success was creating something authentic in a world of artifice. It was building relationships that enhanced rather than diminished those involved. It was remembering, even amid achievement, the transformative power of simple human kindness. Later, as Edmund proposed a toast to Porter Sullivan's future, Thomas quietly took Olivia's hand. "From muddy shoes to all of this?" he murmured. "Who could have imagined?" Olivia smiled, thinking of all the synchronicity and struggle that had brought them to this moment. "Sometimes the smallest gesture reveals the greatest character," she replied, echoing words Edmund had once said about their first encounter. Outside, rain began gently tapping against the windows. Not a storm, but a soft reminder of beginnings, of shoes cleaned without expectation, and of how life's most meaningful journeys often start with the simplest steps taken with an open heart.